I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but I thought against it, and I thought what I'm going to do is just again release a few little videos first of all, just to kind of cover what we would have covered in the first few days of class, and then I'm definitely still toying around with the idea of doing some of the videos based on our textbook. So this particular video is just going to be a quick sort of introduction to me, and then I want to do one that sort of covers the syllabus. And maybe just one that covers D2L. And so feel free, if you want, you can always run these things faster at like 1.2 or 1.5 times or whatever, right? But you know, you may as well learn some of this stuff more, you know, through emails, because I know when you get a nice long email like this from me, the chances of you actually reading it are pretty slim. That said, the onus is on you guys to actually read this. So what I wanted to do with this whole .NET programming class, I think, you know, at least what I would like to know if I was a student, is I'd like to know who the heck is the instructor? What actually is the instructor all about? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go quickly into this PowerPoint, but it's basically, you can forget almost all of this except for this part. And then, and this talks a little bit about me. So my title, I have been working in the industry for quite some time. My most recent title at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota is the Manager of Cloud Data Engineering. And what I actually do is I kind of manage, I know it says business intelligence team, but it's actually more of a data platform team. So I'll be changing that. But anyways, the data platform team. Now, from an educational point of view, I wrote my first program in 1983. It was a fabulous program. Those of you guys that follow me from the fundamentals of programming, all it was a two-liner. Line 10 was to print Grant was here, and line 20 was go to 10. And that was actually done in BASIC. But it was my first program, and it was quite awesome. It was 1983. Not a lot of people had computers even in their household, let alone do anything how to program. I learned the entirety of how to program for quite a few years in the beginning out of books. I didn't have any internet. I didn't have any tutorials, books and magazines, I should say. So certainly no video tutorials. So that's kind of where my mind is at with you guys. You guys are so much better now, better off. You've got the books, you've got, I guess, magazines. I haven't looked at any magazines, but you got YouTube, you've got me, and you've got other sources as well. So, and by that I mean, if you want to pay money for this, you have Udemy, you've got Coursera. There are plenty of ways to learn how to code, rather than just basically sitting in a basement with a basic book. But anyway, that's a little bit about the first program in 1983. 1989, I graduated Bachelor of Arts Administrative Studies. I didn't really want to graduate with Bachelor of Arts Administrative Studies. I actually wanted to do computer stuff, but my professor at that time basically told me not to waste my time with computers. And that caused me not to, and then I kind of just took the shortcut out and got my Bachelor of Arts Administrative Studies, basically a business degree. And that was the worst advice ever given to me by any of my educators. So I'm very sensitive to what could happen if you actually have a bad educator, just so you know. However, a few years later, I basically went back to school, a place very much, it was basically Red River Community College. It's very much like Hennepin Tech or Dakota Tech or Normandale. It was that kind of experience. And I went back. Initially, I went back to take a spreadsheet course. And then the professor of that one yelled at me because I didn't have any prereqs. However, I was unemployed. I was actually quite literally cleaning toilets is what I was doing. And so I really didn't want to clean toilets much more. So what I did is again, the internet's not really around. So, but I had the book, I had the technology, and I just started pouring through that book. And the next time we met, he was mad at me because I was fairly behind. The next week I was on track, and the week following I was ahead. And in his 3-month course, I'd finished it in about like 6 or 7 weeks. So he actually called me Turbo after that. That was named after the button that used to be on PCs to make them run faster. So he then saw me and he said, you know, you should really, you know, do a programming diploma. And so that's what I did. I basically took I did a diploma program, 2 years. We call it well, I guess it would call this a diploma actually, but it gets classified here as an associate's at Red River Community College, and I basically went into programming. And then from there, I eventually got sucked down to the United States, and I was working alongside a lot of people with comp sci degrees. So then I went back to school again and got a master's of science in software engineering with a concentration of data management. By now, I was working quite a bit with databases and languages around databases, and so it made a lot of sense to do that. And that was that. That was a lot of fun hours of at this point now going into the classrooms and usually on weekends or in the evenings. And then quite a bit later, I got a master's of divinity, which really has got nothing to do with anything software. But what I want to kind of say, certainly from the early 90s down to the late 2000s and 10s, I have plenty of experience trying to take classes the way you guys are trying to take classes, which is basically after work or whatever. Now, if we were actually sitting together staring at each other, I totally understand what's going on in these rooms from like 6 to 9 or even 6 to 10, as in the case of some of the classes. So anyway, I'm pulling for you. It's a lot of hard work. A lot of this stuff was done while I had young ankle biters running around my ankles and other stuff. So anyway, so I appreciate the effort, but especially in this particular course, it is worth the effort. So I really hope that you can really manage your time wisely and really dedicate some of it. Other classes that I've taught at Hennepin Tech, you get kind of a sampling there. Most of these are now taught by other people because I am adjunct, right? I work, my full-time job is at Blue Cross Blue Shield. I fill in when there's a need in Hennepin Tech, and there's a need right now from the .NET. So that's what's going on there. But I have certainly taught a lot of database classes. I've taught a lot of sort of higher level information system classes. One thing that's not on here is systems analysis, but I've taught that as well. And then as some of you know, I've taught the fundamentals of programming class. Now, this is kind of interesting because a lot of the languages I've actually used or learned. And my first language was beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code, or BASIC. Still exists today, and we might actually see pieces of it in this course under the guise of Visual Basic. But it's interesting, that language there. And so anyway, so I learned that I'm not going to go down all of these, but in college, when I was told, well, certainly Pascal was the language of choice that colleges used to teach programming back in the late 80s. Pascal eventually gave away, actually before Pascal, it was something called Fortran. After Pascal, it became, I'm not sure what the gap, well, probably COBOL, I bet. Probably became COBOL. I mean, that's what you see me learning down here. I didn't just learn it in college, but I actually coded in it for work. And then eventually we start to see the rise of Java being the language of choice. Now Python is the language of choice for entry-level programming. And I kind of agree with all those steps throughout the decades. It'll be interesting to see in 10 years what actually is the language of choice. Anyway, other languages I learned C, I learned assembly, I think it's assembler, PL1, SQL, which is a completely different style of language. Actually, so is assembler, but anyway, that's the language that I definitely have continued to use quite a bit because it's a database language, and I continue to work in databases. PL SQL is actually procedural language extension to SQL. I tried to give you, by the way, rather than just acronyms, the actual meanings of these things. Python, C#. Now, languages, I wouldn't say I know them, but these are languages I've definitely been exposed to and done stuff with. So, Java, Perl, Lisp. Once you are fully in on some languages, Lisp is quite different. And it's almost a bragging rights language. I would never say I actually know how to do Lisp, but I definitely have done some really neat things in Lisp. C++. So you'll notice we have C, C++, and C#. I haven't yet decided whether or not to bore you guys in an intro class and what the differences were, but I should say. But it's interesting, how pervasive the C structure actually is. And I'll tell you that once you learn C#, you're in pretty good shape you should at least be able to start being able to read C++ and C. And then other languages, which aren't really languages, but hypertext markup language, HTML, cascade styling sheets, extensible markup languages, all these still very much used. What I don't have a lot of experience with, which I kind of wish I did, but not really, is JavaScript. That's another one that you might want to add to your lexicon. One other thing I'll do quickly is I should have had this primed and ready to go, but right there. Let's see if this, yeah, so this gets me in. So when you look at kind of, oops, no, I just want to see my profile. I don't want to see, that's it. That's how I get to my profile. So that's me. Awesome, great. Obviously, feel free to reach out to connect. We can kind of get a sense as to where I've actually worked. I actually did not, I kind of took off all my education stuff. Like I teach a hemp and tech and Dakota Tech. I did that because it became confusing when people were trying to figure out what does the grant do? Because if I put Hennepin Tech, Dakota Tech, they both show up before my main gig, which is this gig. So I kind of, at this point, strip them off and they're not really on there. So this is what you're getting here is most of my industrial experience. I would say there's actually a couple positions before this, but the other thing I've learned is if you put too much on, ageism kind of knocks you out of the running for something. So I typically have only put about 20 years of experience on here or so. So basically, we got the manager of cloud data engineering in Oracle. I worked as an instructor. I then became a developer. Then I became a manager, rising up basically through the business intelligence realm. It was never as linear as this, but I'm representing it like that. Before that, I was a consultant at Tech Pro, where I basically worked in two companies. I worked in Target, and then I worked in something called West Group, which I think is now called Thomson Reuters, again with data. Before that, up in Canada now, I worked in a company called LGS Group. I did a lot of stuff in LGS Group and a lot of different companies. Y2K was sort of becoming a bigger deal at that point, so I did a lot of Y2K analysis. That's year 2000 analysis. I did a lot of that kind of stuff, mostly again with databases. And then before that, I worked in I'll just say United Grain Growers, installing computer systems and grain elevators. Before that, actually, there's a lot of secrets. I did Deloitte & Touche first, where I was using C to analyze data that was being used for lotteries. It was very critical that we got this right. You know, scratch and win tickets, not nearly as random as you might think. They wanted to make sure that we basically had like only one winning ticket, only so many second, you know, those near wins and all that. And the near wins are supposed to be statistically random. There's a lot of really cool processing algorithms that went into that. And then before that, I should say I was installing computer systems and grain elevators. And I guess I would say that was pretty well what I did after college. While in college, I didn't do a lot of coding necessarily, but I definitely was very involved with PCs and trying to automate certain processes. I'm talking about like records and things like that for social groups, you know, like, you know, how many people are in this group and all that kind of jazz. So I did that kind of stuff as well. So anyway, you can kind of get a sense of who I am from this. And I don't know, if you want to know more about me, there you go. All right, so that was your basically who am I thing, and now we'll talk next about the syllabus.